254 million miles. That is the distance. That is the gap between one world and another. And somewhere inside that unimaginable emptiness is a graveyard. We call it the journey to Mars. We speak of it like a dream, a destiny, the next chapter written into the bones of our species. But strip away the poetry, strip away the flags and the rocket flames and the applause, and what remains is a truth we rarely say out loud. More than half of everything we have ever sent there never arrived. Think about that. Not a distant probability, not a worst-case scenario buried in a report, a coin flip, a toss of fate stretched across the void, where the losing side does not mean delay. It means annihilation. Spacecraft that vanished without a signal. Landers that screamed toward the surface and shattered into silence. Machines built by our finest minds, launched with perfect intentions, swallowed whole by a planet that seems almost unwilling to be reached. And yet, we keep going. We keep building. We keep aiming. We keep whispering the same fragile promise into the dark. This time, we make it. This is the most lethal journey in human history, and we still want to go. Let me show you why it deserves that title. The moment a vessel leaves Earth, it enters an environment that was never designed for life, not indifferent to us, actively hostile. The cold out there is not the cold of a winter night. It is minus 270 degrees, the temperature of space itself, the residual chill of a universe that has been dying since the moment it was born. The metal skin of a spacecraft, that thin, gleaming shell of aluminum and titanium, is all that stands between a human heartbeat and total nothing. One breach, one crack the width of a hair, and the pressure inside, the pressure that keeps your blood liquid, your lungs inflated, your consciousness intact, escapes into the vacuum in seconds. Fluids on your tongue would begin to boil, not from heat, from the absence of any pressure at all. That is the paradox waiting out there. You could freeze and boil at the same time, but the vacuum is patient. The vacuum can wait, because long before it ever touches you, something faster is already hunting. Radiation, invisible, and silent everywhere. Here on Earth, we are protected by something we almost never think about. A magnetic shield, generated by the churning iron heart of our planet, wraps around us like an invisible cocoon. It deflects the storm. It turns away the fire the sun throws at us every single day. Step beyond it, and that shield is gone. In deep space, high-energy particles move at nearly the speed of light. They pass through metal. They pass through flesh. They pass through the delicate strands of your DNA, and each collision is a tiny act of sabotage, rewriting the code that makes you who you are. A single galactic cosmic ray can tear through a human cell like a bullet through paper. And on the journey to Mars, that bombardment does not stop. Not for a minute, not for an hour. It continues for months. It continues while you sleep, while you eat, while you dream of the red world ahead. Your body becomes a battlefield you cannot see. But even radiation, in all its quiet violence, is not the deadliest thing about this voyage. The deadliest thing is time. Because Mars is not close. Mars is not a weekend away. Under the best conditions our physics allows, the journey takes 7 months. 7 months in a sealed metal tube barely larger than a modest apartment. 7 months where turning back is not an option. Where a broken part cannot be replaced. Where a sudden illness has no hospital, no rescue, no cavalry riding over the horizon. And here is the cruelest part. Halfway through, Earth becomes a light, just a light, a pale blue point of a light, indistinguishable from the countless stars around it. Home reduced to a pixel. Every person you have ever loved compressed into a single trembling dot behind you. That is a psychological weight no human has ever truly carried. The astronauts who walked on the moon were always 3 days from home. They could look up and see Earth filling the sky, vast and comforting, close enough to feel. Mars travelers will have no such comfort. They will drift into a distance so profound that a radio message, moving at the speed of light, can take 20 minutes to reach them. 20 minutes for a cry for help to arrive. 20 minutes more for any answer to return. By then, whatever was going to happen has already happened. You are alone in a way no human has ever been alone. And still, the journey is not the end of the danger. It is only the beginning. Because after all of it, the cold, the radiation, the crushing isolation, you must survive the arrival. And the arrival is where Mars has claimed the most victims. They call it the 7 minutes of terror. 7 minutes in which a spacecraft slams into the thin Martian atmosphere at 13,000 miles per hour and must slow itself to a gentle stop, completely on its own. No human hand can help. The signal delay makes real-time control impossible. Every maneuver must be perfect, pre-programmed, flawless. The friction of entry heats the shielding to temperatures hotter than molten rock. Parachutes must deploy in an atmosphere so thin it barely exists. Engines must fire at the precise fraction of a second. A single miscalculation, a single grain of error in millions of lines of code, and the machine that traveled 250 million miles becomes a new crater on an ancient world. This is why so many missions have failed here. Not in the launch, not in the crossing, but in those final, merciless minutes. The red dust of Mars is scattered with our wreckage. Metal bones bleaching under an alien sun. Monuments to ambition that reached the doorstep and fell. And knowing all of this, every horror, every statistic, every ghost, we still line up to go. Why? What is it about that cold red point of light in our sky that pulls at us so violently? What ancient instinct overrides our own sense of survival and whispers, "Cross the void, no matter the cost"? That is the question at the heart of this story. Because this is not merely a documentary about a dangerous trip. This is about the strange and beautiful madness of a species that looks at the deadliest path imaginable and calls it home. Over the next hour, we will travel that path together. We will feel the cold of deep space. We will trace the invisible rivers of radiation. We will stand inside the loneliness of 100 million miles. We will fall through those 7 minutes of terror. And we will confront the deepest truth of all, that the danger is not a reason to stay. For us, it has always been the reason to go. The universe did not build a door to Mars. It built a gauntlet, a trial of fire and cold and silence and time, designed by physics itself to keep the living out. And we are the creatures foolish enough, brave enough, to walk through it anyway. This is the most lethal journey in human history. Let me tell you everything it will cost us, and everything we are willing to pay. To understand why this journey kills, you must first unlearn something. You must forget the word space. We say it so casually. Space. As if it were simply the emptiness between things, a convenient nothing, a gap to be crossed. But there is no such thing as empty space. What lies between Earth and Mars is not absence. It is a substance, a medium with its own laws, its own weather, its own moods. It is an ocean, and like every ocean, it drowns those who underestimate it. Consider the sailors of our own past. For thousands of years, human beings looked at the sea and saw a barrier, a wall of water at the edge of the known world. And for most of that history, to sail beyond sight of land was to accept that you might never return. The ocean did not hate them. It simply obeyed forces indifferent to human hope. Deep space is that ocean, raised to an impossible power. But here is where the analogy breaks, and where the true horror begins. On Earth, even the most distant sailor breathed the same air as the people he left behind. He drinks water that fell from the same sky. He is held by the same gravity, warmed by the same sun, wrapped in the same protective atmosphere. The traveler to Mars leaves all of that behind. Every single guarantee of life, gone. And this is a thing our bodies were never designed to comprehend. For 4 billion years, life on this planet evolved under a set of conditions so constant, so reliable, that we simply built ourselves around them. Gravity that pulls us downward at a precise and unchanging rate, an atmosphere pressing gently on our skin, a pressure we never feel because we have never known its absence, a temperature range narrow enough to keep water liquid, the single substance our entire biology depends upon. We are not merely inhabitants of Earth. We are expressions of it. Our bones are calibrated to its pull. Our blood is tuned to its pressure. Our very sense of up and down is a gift the planet gave us. Take those gifts away, and the body begins to forget how to be a body. In the weightlessness of the journey, something quietly catastrophic occurs. Without gravity's constant demand, the bones stop believing they are needed. They begin to dissolve, releasing their calcium, thinning month after month at a rate 10 times faster than the worst disease of old age on Earth. An astronaut on the way to Mars could lose a quarter of certain bones before ever arriving. The muscles follow the same logic of surrender. The heart itself, that tireless pump shaped by a lifetime of fighting gravity, grows lazy and round, no longer straining against a force that no longer exists. Even the eyes change. Fluids that gravity once pulled downward now drift upward, pressing against the back of the eye, subtly reshaping vision itself. Some who return see the world differently, literally, for the rest of their lives. The body, adrift, begins to unmake itself. And there is a profound and unsettling philosophy hidden in this decay. It tells us that we were never independent beings. We imagined ourselves as masters of our environment, creatures who conquered the earth. But the truth is the reverse. We are held together by the earth. Our strength was always borrowed. Our form was always a collaboration between our flesh and the planet's constant, invisible embrace. Remove the planet, and we quietly come apart. Now consider what this means for the mind. Because the human brain, too, is an instrument tuned to Earth. For our entire existence as a species, we have lived beneath the sky. We have felt the ground beneath our feet. We have known, always, that home was near. Over the hill, across the river, beyond the trees, deep space offers none of this. There is no ground. There is no sky. There is no horizon, no sunrise, no gentle rhythm of day and night to anchor the mind. There is only the endless black, sprinkled with the cold, unblinking light of stars that do not twinkle. Because there is no atmosphere out there to make them dance. They simply stare, steady, ancient, utterly indifferent. Imagine facing that, hour after hour, for 7 months. The human mind was built for connection, for the reassuring presence of others, for the knowledge that help is within reach. Strip that away, and something begins to strain. Astronauts have described a specific and haunting sensation in deep isolation. A feeling that the walls of their spacecraft are the entire universe, and everything beyond is a void that does not care whether they live or die. There is a name for a version of this dread. The overview effect gives some a sense of unity, of peace, of belonging to something vast. But there is a darker cousin to it. A creeping smallness, a confrontation with a scale so immense that the human ego cannot hold its shape against it. You are a single warm thought, suspended in an infinity of cold. And the cold is not a metaphor. Let us speak plainly about the temperature of the void. In the shadow of deep space, far from any warming star, matter approaches a state we can barely imagine. Molecules slow, motion nearly stops. The universe out there hovers just a few degrees above absolute zero. The theoretical point at which all movement ceases, the coldest anything can ever be. This is not the cold of a mountain peak. It is the cold of the universe's own death. And yet, turn toward the sun, and the opposite terror waits. With no atmosphere to filter or soften it, sunlight in space is raw, undiluted, ferocious. One side of a spacecraft can roast while the other side freezes, a difference of hundreds of degrees across a single thin hull. The machine must fight a war on two fronts at once, boiling and freezing, light and dark, fire and the absence of all fire. This is the ocean we intend to cross, not empty, never empty, filled with forces that pull our bodies apart and press against our minds and swing between extremes no living thing has ever endured. And still, we plot the course. There is something almost sacred in that stubbornness. Every generation of explorers has faced its own impossible ocean. The first humans to leave Africa, walking into lands they could not imagine. The sailors who pushed past the horizon, certain they might fall off the edge of the world. The pioneers who crossed oceans and deserts and ice, driven by a hunger that logic could never fully explain. We have always been the animal that walks toward the thing that could kill it, not out of ignorance. That is the crucial point. The traveler to Mars will know, with perfect scientific clarity, every way that the void can end them. They will have read the reports. They will have seen the wreckage of those who went before. They will understand the odds better than any explorer in history. And they will go anyway. Perhaps that is the truest definition of our species. Not the toolmaker, not the thinker, but the one who looks directly at the abyss, understands it completely, and steps forward regardless. The ocean between the worlds does not want us. Every law of physics conspires to keep us on this small blue shore. The distance is too great, the cold too deep, the radiation too fierce, the isolation too crushing for a mind shaped by warmth and company. By every rational measure, we should stay home. And yet the pull of that red light in our sky has never weakened. If anything, the more we learn about how deadly the crossing will be, the more fiercely we seem to want it. Because to us, an ocean has never been a wall. It has only ever been an invitation. In the next chapter, we turn to the invisible killer that waits in that ocean. The one you cannot see, cannot feel, cannot hide from. The silent rain of the cosmos that passes through steel and skin alike and rewrites the very code of life, one particle at a time. There is a kind of danger you can prepare for, a storm you can see coming, a fire you can feel the heat of, a predator whose footsteps warn you before it strikes. These are the dangers our ancestors survived, and our bodies carry the memory of that survival. The racing heart, the sharpened senses, the instinct to run. But there is another kind of danger, the kind that gives no warning at all. No sound, no sensation, no sign that anything is wrong. It passes through you in an instant, and you feel nothing, nothing, even as it changes you forever. This is radiation, and in the space between the worlds, it falls like an eternal, invisible rain. To understand it, we must first understand what protects us here, on this fragile shore we call home. Because we live our entire lives inside a fortress, and we never once see its walls. Deep beneath your feet, at the center of the earth, there is an ocean of molten iron. It churns and swirls with the planet's slow rotation, and in that motion, it generates something extraordinary. A magnetic field that reaches thousands of miles into space, wrapping the entire world in an invisible embrace. This is the magnetosphere, and it is quite literally the reason you are alive. Every second of every day, the sun hurls a storm of charged particles across the solar system, a wind of raw energy moving at 1,000,000 miles an hour. Without protection, this wind would strip our atmosphere away, molecule by molecule, until the Earth became a dry and barren rock, exactly as we believe happened to Mars billions of years ago. But our magnetic shield deflects that storm. It bends the deadly wind around us, channeling it toward the poles, where it dies in a silent blaze of color. The auroras, those shimmering curtains of green and violet light. Every time you see those lights dance across a polar sky, you are watching your planet win a war on your behalf. A war you never knew was being fought. Now leave the fortress, cross beyond the magnetosphere into open space, and that shield is gone. There is nothing to bend the storm now, nothing to soften the blow. The full fury of the sun reaches you undiluted, and worse, something far stranger and far more dangerous begins to arrive from the depths of the galaxy itself. We call them galactic cosmic rays. These are not born in our sun. They come from far beyond it. From the shattered remains of exploded stars, from supernovae that died before our world was even formed. When a giant star collapses and detonates, it flings its atoms outward at nearly the speed of light, stripped down to their naked cores, screaming across the galaxy for millions of years. Some of them, after that unimaginable journey, strike the body of a human traveler. Think about the strangeness of that. A star died in agony, in a corner of the galaxy so distant we may never name it. And the last act of that death, a single particle, travels across the void for eons, only to end its existence by tearing through a strand of your DNA. You would become the final resting place of a fragment of a dead star. This is not poetry. This is physics. And the consequences are severe. Each cosmic ray carries an energy so concentrated that ordinary shielding cannot stop it. On Earth, we block radiation with lead, with concrete, with thick barriers of dense matter. But these particles are so powerful that shielding can actually make things worse. When they strike a metal wall, they can shatter, spraying out a shower of secondary particles, like a single bullet fragmenting into 100 smaller ones. The very armor meant to protect you becomes a source of new fire. And so the traveler to Mars floats inside a thin metal shell, absorbing this rain, day after day, month after month, with no true defense. During the 7-month crossing, they will accumulate a dose of radiation hundreds of times greater than anything a person on Earth receives in the same period. Their body will be struck by these invisible bullets thousands upon thousands of times. Most of the damage will be repaired. The human cell is a remarkable machine, constantly fixing the small injuries of daily life. But some of the damage will not be repaired correctly. Some strands of DNA will be spliced back together wrong. And in those tiny errors lies the long, slow thread of cancer, a seed planted in the void that may not bloom for years. But there is a deeper and more disturbing possibility, one that touches not the body, but the self. The brain is made of neurons, delicate cells that do not regenerate the way skin or blood does. When a cosmic ray tears through brain tissue, it can damage these cells permanently. And in experiments here on Earth, exposure to this kind of radiation has produced troubling effects. Impaired memory, slowed thinking, changes in mood and judgment. Consider what this means. The traveler to Mars will need their mind more than anything. They will face impossible decisions, technical crises, the crushing weight of isolation. Their intellect is their only true survival tool. And yet the journey itself may be quietly eroding that very intellect, dulling the blade at the precise moment they need it sharpest. You could arrive at Mars, a slightly different person than the one who left Earth. Not through choice, not through experience, but through the silent, cumulative rewriting of your own neural machinery by the debris of ancient stars. There is a profound humbling in this truth. We like to imagine the mind as something separate, something sacred, a soul that floats above the mere matter of the body. But radiation reminds us of an uncomfortable fact, that the mind is matter, that every thought you have ever had, every memory, every flicker of love or fear exists as a physical pattern in physical cells. And physical things can be broken. Your identity is not immune to the universe. It is made of the same stuff the universe can destroy. And here we arrive at the strangest part of the story. Because the same cosmic rays that threaten the traveler are also, in a sense, our creators. The heavy elements in your body, the iron in your blood, the calcium in your bones, the carbon that forms the backbone of every molecule of life. None of it was made on Earth. All of it was forged in the hearts of dying stars and scattered across space by the very explosions that produce cosmic rays. You are built from stellar death. You always have been. The radiation of deep space is not some alien intruder. It is the same violent process that assembled the atoms of your body in the first place. The universe that is trying to kill the Mars traveler is the same universe that made them possible. There is a terrible symmetry in that. To reach another world, we must expose ourselves to the raw creative force of the cosmos, the same force that once created us. We must step back into the furnace we were born from. And perhaps that is fitting. Perhaps there is something honest in it. We spend our lives shielded, comfortable, forgetting entirely what kind of universe we actually live in. We forget that we are riding a small, warm rock through a shooting gallery of stellar debris. We forget that our safety is an illusion, a temporary gift of iron and magnetism, and that the true nature of the cosmos is fire and radiation and relentless, indifferent energy. The traveler to Mars will not be allowed to forget. They will feel the universe as it truly is, not the gentle blue sky of home, but the raw and ancient storm that has always surrounded us. The storm we were simply lucky enough to be sheltered from. To go to Mars is to step out of the shelter, to stand, unprotected, in the silent rain that has fallen since the first stars died, and to whisper, against all reason, I am not afraid. In the next chapter, we confront perhaps the most human danger of all. Not cold, not radiation, but the crushing, unprecedented weight of being truly, utterly alone. Farther from another living soul than any human has ever been. There is a distance that changes what it means to be human, not measured in miles, not measured in fuel or time, measured in something older, something buried deep in the architecture of the mind, the distance from every other living soul. For your entire life, you have never truly been alone. Even in your loneliest moment, in an empty house at midnight, on a solitary road, in the depths of some private grief, another person was always near. A neighbor sleeping behind a wall, a stranger a phone call away, a voice, a face, a heartbeat somewhere within reach. The knowledge, however faint, that you belonged to a world full of others. The traveler to Mars will lose that knowledge entirely. Consider the numbers and let them settle slowly. At the farthest point of the journey, a Mars-bound crew will be tens of millions of miles from the nearest human being. Not a rescue away, not a lifeboat away, simply beyond reach, beyond return, beyond the possibility of any hand reaching out to save them. No human being has ever been that far from home. The astronauts of the moon, for all their courage, were never truly severed from us. They could turn their spacecraft and see the Earth, vast, blue, alive, hanging in the black like a promise. It filled their windows. It filled their hearts. Home was always there. Close enough to cover with an outstretched thumb, close enough to feel. The Mars traveler will look back and find home has vanished into the stars. At that distance, the Earth is no longer a world. It is a point of light, a pale blue speck, so small and so faint that you could lose it among the other stars if you looked away for a moment. Everything you have ever known, every ocean, every mountain, every war and love song and newborn child in all of human history, compressed into a single trembling pixel. And here the philosophy becomes almost unbearable. Because that speck is not just a planet. That speck is context. It is the entire frame that gives a human life its meaning. Our sense of importance, of purpose, of mattering. All of it is built on the assumption that we exist within a world of others who see us, who need us, who remember us. Reduce that world to a dot. And what happens to the meaning? Some who have contemplated this describe a vertigo of the soul, a sudden, staggering awareness of true scale. The realization that the human drama, so enormous when you are inside it, is, from the perspective of the void, almost nothing at all. A flicker of warmth on a mote of dust, adrift in an ocean that stretches beyond all comprehension. To carry that awareness, alone, for months, is a burden no explorer has ever borne. And then there is the silence. We must speak carefully about the silence, because it is unlike any silence on Earth. Here, even in the deepest wilderness, communication is instant. You speak, and you are heard. You call, and an answer returns in the same breath. This immediacy is so fundamental to us that we never notice it. The seamless, real-time thread of connection that binds every conversation. That thread does not survive the distance to Mars. Light itself, the fastest thing in the universe, needs time to cross that gulf. A message from a Mars traveler takes many minutes to reach the Earth, and any reply takes many minutes to return. At the greatest separation, a single exchange, a question and its answer, can consume 40 minutes. Think of what that destroys. There can be no conversation, no comfort in a loved one's voice responding to your fear. You speak into the dark, and then you wait, alone with your own words, for an answer that arrives long after the feeling that prompted it has passed. You cannot argue. You cannot console. You cannot share a moment, because the moment is already dead by the time the other person receives it. Connection itself breaks down into a series of lonely monologues, flung across the void and answered by ghosts. And in an emergency, this delay becomes something crueler still. If something goes wrong, a fire, a failure, a sudden catastrophe, there is no one to call for help in any meaningful sense. By the time your cry reaches Earth and any guidance returns, the crisis will already have resolved itself. You will have lived, or you will have died, before the world even knew you were in danger. The traveler must become their own rescue, their own doctor, their own final authority. There is no cavalry. There is no higher power reaching down. There is only the crew, sealed in their small metal world, holding their own fate entirely in their own hands. And this forces a confrontation with a truth most of us spend our lives avoiding. We move through our days wrapped in a comforting illusion that someone, somewhere is watching over us. That if things go truly wrong, help will come. It is a childlike faith, and it runs deep. Even those who believe in nothing still feel, in their bones, that the world is somehow holding them. The void strips that illusion away completely. Out there, in the silence between the worlds, there is no watcher, no safety net, no promise that things will be all right. There is only the raw, unfiltered reality of existence. That we are small and fragile, and ultimately responsible for ourselves in a universe that offers no guarantees. To survive the journey to Mars, one must make peace with that reality, not deny it, not flee from it, but look directly into the indifferent face of the cosmos and find, somehow, the strength to keep going anyway. This may be the hardest thing a human has ever been asked to do. And yet, there is another side to this darkness, a strange and luminous possibility hidden within the isolation. Because those who have touched the edges of this experience, the astronauts who have gazed back at the shrinking Earth, often return transformed in a way they struggle to describe. They speak of a profound shift in perception, of seeing the planet not as a collection of nations and borders and conflicts, but as a single, fragile, living whole, a lonely oasis of life in an infinite desert of black. From far enough away, all our divisions vanish. There are no countries from space. There is only Earth, one home shared by everything that has ever lived. The isolation, in other words, can teach a kind of unity. The distance can reveal how precious the thing we left behind truly is. To leave home completely is perhaps the only way to finally understand what home means. And here lies the deepest paradox of the entire voyage. We go to Mars, in part, to escape the limits of Earth, to prove we are more than one planet's children, to scatter the seed of life beyond a single fragile world. And yet the journey itself, in all its crushing loneliness, may teach us the opposite lesson, that our bond to the Earth and to each other is the most precious thing we possess. The traveler will spend months learning, in the most brutal way imaginable, exactly how much they belong to the world they are leaving behind. They will carry the weight of the void. They will feel the true distance between one soul and another. They will stare into a silence deeper than any human has known and confront the possibility that they are utterly cosmically alone. And still, knowing all of this, they will choose to go. Because within that terrible solitude lies something we have always hungered for. The chance to stand where no one has stood. To see what no one has seen. To carry the flame of human presence into a darkness it has never touched. The void does not offer comfort. It offers only truth. And there have always been among us those willing to trade comfort for truth. Willing to pay any price to press their hand against the unknown. In the next chapter, we arrive at the final trial. After the cold, the radiation, the endless loneliness, the destination itself, the 7 minutes of terror, the most dangerous descent in all of exploration, where success and annihilation are separated by a fraction of a second. You have survived the crossing. The cold did not breach the hull. The radiation did not break your mind. The loneliness did not swallow you whole. For 7 months you have endured the deadliest ocean in existence. And now, at last, the destination rises before you. Mars. No longer a point of light. A world, red and vast and filling the window, close enough to touch. You have come 250 million miles, and the most dangerous part of the entire journey has not yet begun. There is a bitter irony written into the physics of arrival. Everything about your survival so far has depended on speed, on the tremendous velocity that carried you across the void. But that same speed, which was your salvation, now becomes your greatest enemy. Because you are approaching the surface of Mars at more than 12,000 miles per hour. And in the span of about 7 minutes, you must slow to 0. Not gradually, not gently. In 7 minutes, a machine hurtling faster than any bullet must come to a soft and perfect stop on alien ground, or become a smear of wreckage across the red dust. This is the descent, and it has killed more of our missions than any other moment. Let us understand why. Because the difficulty here is not a matter of caution or care. It is a trap built into the very nature of Mars, a planet that seems almost designed to defeat the act of landing. Consider the atmosphere. On Earth, our thick blanket of air is a gift to any returning spacecraft. It presses against the vehicle, creating friction, bleeding away speed, allowing parachutes to catch and hold. Our atmosphere is a natural break, and a generous one. Mars offers a cruel imitation of this gift. Its atmosphere is there, but barely. Less than 1% as thick as Earth's. Far too thin to slow a spacecraft on its own, yet just thick enough to generate blistering heat as the vehicle tears through it. This is the trap. The Martian air gives you all of the fire and almost none of the braking. As the spacecraft plunges into that thin atmosphere, the friction builds to a fury. The forward shield glows, then blazes, reaching temperatures hotter than molten lava, thousands of degrees, hot enough to vaporize most metals. Behind that shield, the traveler waits, protected by a thin barrier of ablating material, engineered to burn away in a controlled sacrifice. The vehicle becomes a falling star, a streak of fire painted across the Martian sky. And every second of that fire must be endured perfectly. A shield that fails, a fraction of a degree of the wrong angle, and the searing heat breaks through, ending everything in an instant. But the heat is only the first trial. Once the worst of the speed is bled away, the spacecraft must deploy its parachutes. And here, in that thin and treacherous air, the physics turns nightmarish. The parachute must open while the vehicle is still moving faster than the speed of sound. a violent, wrenching shock that can tear a lesser design to shreds. The fabric must be impossibly strong. The timing must be impossibly precise. Open too early, and the parachute is destroyed by the supersonic forces. Open too late, and there is not enough sky left to slow down before impact. There is a window of a few seconds in which everything must go right. And even a perfect parachute is not enough, because the Martian air is so thin that a parachute alone cannot bring a heavy vehicle to a safe landing speed. It slows the fall, but not enough, not nearly enough. So in the final moments, the machine must let go of its parachute entirely and fire its engines. Imagine it, a spacecraft, seconds from the ground, cutting away the very parachute that has been saving it and igniting rockets to lower itself the rest of the way. Engines firing downward against the pull of the planet, holding the vehicle in a delicate, roaring balance, searching for a safe patch of ground in a landscape it has never seen. Every stage of this must flow into the next without a single error. Heat shield, parachute, engines, touchdown. A cascade of perfectly timed miracles, one after another with no margin for failure. And here is the detail that transforms this from difficult into almost unthinkable. No one can help. Remember the distance. Remember the silence. A radio signal from Mars takes many minutes to reach the Earth, which means that by the time we on Earth even see that the descent has begun, it is already over. The spacecraft has already landed or already died. Minutes before the news of its arrival reaches us, we cannot guide it. We cannot correct it. We cannot intervene in any way. The entire descent must be flown by the machine itself alone, executing thousands of pre-written commands in perfect sequence, making life and death decisions in fractions of a second, with no human hand to steady it and no voice to call out a warning. This is why they call it the 7 minutes of terror. Because for those 7 minutes, everyone who built the mission, everyone who dreamed it and bled for it and staked their lives' work upon it, can only sit in silence, helpless, waiting for a signal that has already, long ago, been decided. The outcome exists before the knowledge of it arrives. The traveler has already lived or already died in a moment we cannot reach. There is a strange and haunting philosophy buried in this delay. It is a small taste of a truth the universe hides from us in daily life. That certainty and knowledge are not the same thing. That events unfold according to laws indifferent to our awareness of them. On Earth, we live in the comforting illusion of the present moment, of real-time control. Mars strips that illusion away and shows us the raw structure of reality. That we are always, in some sense, receiving news of a universe that has already moved on. To land on Mars is to surrender control completely, to trust the machine, the math, the years of preparation, and then to let go, utterly, and accept whatever has already happened. And this, perhaps, is the final lesson the journey teaches. Because the descent is not merely a technical challenge, it is a confrontation with the limits of human power. We can build the vehicle, we can calculate the trajectory, we can prepare for every conceivable failure, but in the end, we must release our creation into the fire and the silence, and accept that the outcome is beyond our reach. It is the oldest human predicament, made stark and literal. We do everything we can, and then we must simply hope. The red dust of Mars holds the wreckage of those who did everything they could, and hoped, and lost. Machines that crossed the ocean of the void flawlessly, only to shatter in the final minutes, the final seconds The final breath before safety. Their broken remains scattered across the plains, monuments to how narrow the line truly is between triumph and oblivion. And someday, perhaps soon, a vessel carrying not machines but human beings will make that same terrifying plunge. Human hearts, beating faster than they ever have, sealed inside a falling star. Human minds, counting down through the fire, feeling the violent jolt of the parachute, hearing the roar of the engines in those last, impossible moments. They will not be able to call home. They will not be able to ask for help. They will fall through the 7 minutes of terror utterly alone, trusting everything to the machine and the math and their own fragile courage. And if they survive, if the shield holds and the parachute catches and the engines fire true and the wheels or the legs touch down softly on that ancient red ground, they will become the first humans to stand on another world since we last touched the moon. The first to leave footprints in the dust of a planet that has spent its entire existence trying to keep the living out. The 7 minutes of terror is the final gate, the last trial in the deadliest journey we have ever attempted. And beyond it lies not safety, for Mars itself is a world that wants us dead, but something we have hungered for since the first human looked up at that red star and wondered. Arrival. Presence. The impossible made real. In our final chapter, we step back from the fire and the cold and the silence to ask the question beneath all of it. Why? Why do we hunger for the deadliest journey imaginable? And what does that hunger reveal about who we truly are? So we return to the question, the one that has haunted every mile of this journey. Why? Why would any creature, having understood every horror we have described, the freezing void, the silent rain of radiation, the crushing solitude, the 7 minutes of terror, still choose to go? Why would we look at the deadliest path in human history and feel, not fear, but longing? The answer is not simple, but it is written into the deepest layers of who we are. Begin with a single, humbling fact. Every atom in your body was made in space. The iron in your blood, the calcium in your bones, the oxygen filling your lungs at this very moment. All of it forged in the hearts of stars that lived and died long before the Earth existed. You are not merely an inhabitant of the cosmos. You are the cosmos, briefly organized into something that can wonder about itself. We are the universe, waking up and asking where it came from. Perhaps that is the true root of the longing. When we look up at that red point of light and feel the pull to cross the void, we are not defying nature. We are obeying it. The same restless energy that drove atoms to assemble into life, and life to crawl from the sea, and our ancestors to walk out of Africa into an unknown world. That energy has never stopped. It simply found a new frontier. The stars are not our destination. They are our origin, and something in us has always known it. Consider the entire arc of our story. For hundreds of thousands of years, we were a small and fragile species, huddled on a single continent, surrounded by dangers we barely understood. By every rational measure, we should have stayed where it was safe. We did not stay. We crossed deserts that could kill us. We sailed oceans that swallowed our ships. We walked onto ice sheets, into jungles, over mountains, into every hostile corner of a planet that was never particularly interested in our survival. And each time, we lost people. Each time, the ones who went first paid the price for the ones who followed. This is not a flaw in our nature. It is the engine of it. We are the animal that refuses the edge of the map. Show us a horizon, and we must know what lies beyond it. Show us a locked door, and we must know what it hides. Tell us that something is impossible, and a fire lights behind our eyes that will not be put out until we have tried. Mars is simply the next horizon, the next impossible thing. And yes, it will cost us. Let us not soften that truth. The first travelers to that red world will face dangers no human has ever faced. Some missions will fail. Some may not return. The red dust may claim human lives, as it has already claimed our machines, and we will mourn them, and the mourning will be real. But here is what makes us who we are. We have always been willing to trade the safety of the many for the reach of the few. Not carelessly, not without grief, but because we understand something profound about ourselves, that a species which stops reaching is a species that has already begun to die. There's a deeper reason still, one that goes beyond curiosity, beyond adventure, beyond the restless pull of the frontier. We are, as far as we know, alone. In all the vastness we have searched, we have found no other voice, no other mind, no other flicker of life looking back at us. It is possible, genuinely possible, that we are the only place in the entire universe where matter has learned to think, to love, to dream, to ask why. And if that is true, then we carry something unspeakably precious. We are the only light, the single candle of awareness in an infinite dark. And that light exists right now on one small and fragile world, a world that has been struck by asteroids before, a world that could be struck again, a world whose kindness to us is not guaranteed to last forever. To place all of consciousness on a single planet is to gamble everything on a single roll. This is the truest reason we must go. Not for glory, not for conquest, but for continuity. To take the flame of awareness and carry it to a second shore, so that if the first should ever fall dark, the light does not go out. So that the universe does not lose the one thing that could ever understand it. To become a species of two worlds is to buy insurance against oblivion itself. And there is something almost sacred in that ambition. For 4 billion years, life on Earth has clung to this single rock, at the mercy of every cosmic accident. We are the first generation of living things with the power to change that. The first with the ability to reach beyond the cradle and plant life somewhere new. That is not a small thing. It may be the most important thing our species ever does. But let us not pretend it is only about survival. Because when that first human being finally stands upon the surface of Mars, when they lower the visor against an alien sun and take that first crunching step into red dust that has waited billions of years for a footprint, something will happen that transcends all our calculations. For the first time in the history of the Earth, life will look up at the sky from another world. A human being will stand on distant ground and see, hanging in a strange dark sky, a small pale blue star, and they will know, with a certainty no words can hold, that everything they have ever loved is contained within that single fragile point of light. They will be farther from home than any human in history, and they will understand home more deeply than any human ever has. This is the paradox we have circled from the beginning. The deadliest journey is also the most meaningful. The path that could destroy us is the same path that could ensure we endure. The distance that isolates us completely is the distance that finally reveals how connected we have always been. We do not go to Mars in spite of the danger. We go, in some sense, because of it. Because the danger is the price of meaning. Because a thing that costs nothing teaches nothing. because the human spirit has always defined itself not by the comforts it accepted, but by the impossible odds it chose to face. The universe built a gauntlet to keep us out. Cold and radiation and silence and fire, arranged by the laws of physics into a barrier that should, by all reason, be uncrossable. And we, small, soft, mortal creatures, made of stardust and stubbornness, have looked at that barrier and decided to cross it anyway. That is who we are. That is who we have always been. Not the strongest species, not the fastest, not the most suited to survive, but the one that dreams beyond its own limits. The one that reaches for the thing it cannot yet grasp. The one that stands at the edge of the deadliest ocean ever known, feels the full weight of everything that could go wrong, and steps forward. Someday, the red dust of Mars will hold a human footprint, and in that moment, the most lethal journey in human history will become something else entirely. Not a graveyard of failed machines, not a monument to what the universe took from us, but proof of the one truth that has carried us from the first fire to the farthest star, that there is no darkness deep enough, no distance vast enough, no danger great enough to stop a species that has decided to go. The journey will cost us everything we fear, and we will pay it gladly, because to reach for the impossible has always been the most human thing of all.